Okay guys, today I'm going to show you how to change the pads and rotors on a light-duty Ford truck. Now today we're going to do this on an E150 van, but it's going to be very similar for all the light-duty stuff. First we're going to remove the cap of the master cylinder. Then with the wheel removed, we're going to locate the two caliper mounting bolts and remove those with a ratchet. Now as you remove these bolts, you can just set those to the side for a thorough cleaning and reinstallation later. Now if for some reason those bolts get damaged, you will have to replace those, and you'll be able to pick those up at the hardware store. Now to get the caliper off, you can use a large flathead screwdriver and first work the top of the caliper off and then the bottom, and then you should be able to gently wobble it off. Then you can just hang the caliper from the coil spring with a clothes hanger. Now the next thing we'll do is wobble the brake pads off. And then you'll have to get the small stainless steel clips out of their mounts. And you see they'll just wobble out. One of these was broke. You can see here where the one ear of it was broke. And generally I do replace these no matter what, but with a broken piece like that, they definitely will need to be replaced. Believe it or not, these things are pretty important because they help keep the pad tight, acting as a shim, and they also give the pad something to ride on and provide a noise-free working surface. Now we're going to locate the dust cover, and we're going to use a flathead screwdriver and tap that around the lip of the dust cover, or you can always just tap the dust cover to the side, but I always like to do that first, and then the dust cover should come right off. The next thing you're going to want to do is locate the small cotter pin inside all of this grease. Now if you're not replacing the rotor, you won't need to do any of this, but it's a good idea to learn how it works anyways. Now I'll knock the cotter pin out just by using the needle nose pliers and a hammer. And I'm going to put everything into the dust cap so that nothing gets dirty, and when I reinstall it I'll have all my parts sitting right here. And I can just remove these few more pieces. Take that nut off just using a simple crescent wrench. Be aware of the rotor because it is heavy. You don't want that to fall on your leg. The bigger the trucks, the bigger the rotors are. You want to be gentle here, removing this outer bearing. First the washer and then the bearing. Then you can see the bearing on the back side of the rotor also, and these rotors were in pretty bad shape. Now to get that bearing out, first you have to remove this seal. So you see the new seal there I was holding out. Now there's a couple ways you can get this out. One way that's real easy, sometimes it won't work, is just you can work a small flathead screwdriver right underneath the seal. Now if that doesn't work, flip the rotor upside down. You can see I rest the rotor on my foot, and then just gently tap on the back side of the bearing. You don't want to damage the bearing, so just a very gentle tap should do it. You'll see the bearing and seal will just fall right out. Now I'll take the new rotor, spray some brake parts cleaner on it, just to get the packaging grease that's on there kind of off the best that I can. Okay, and then it's time to pack the bearings. Now one thing I'm going to do is check all the surfaces of the bearings, the front, the back, the rollers, check for any scarring, burning, looseness of the bearing. I'll check the wobble, as you see there, back and forth. And if everything seems okay and the bearing seems to be pretty tight still, I'm going to repack the bearing. Now there's a couple ways you can do it. You can put some grease in it and just kind of sandwich your hands together, and it makes a big mess even if you're using gloves, but it will work if you don't have a bearing packer. Just to make sure, you want to pack these bearings good with grease to ensure long life. Now the bearing packers are real easy. You see, you just set the bearing inside of it and then tighten the one half of the packer down onto the other half. Pump grease into it, and as you pump grease into it, that grease is going to push into the bearing and push the old grease out. And you can see just the color of the grease. That dark grease there is the grease that was pushed out, and you can see the clean, lighter colored blue grease that got pushed into the bearing. So then that bearing's packed, and you can set that to the side. Then you can pack the outer bearing. Now, one thing you want to do is make sure that your ABS reader is cleaned off. They tend to pick up a lot of metal shavings because they are small magnets. And now you're ready to add grease to the inside of the rotor. So you can take a good gob of grease and plop that right down inside the rotor. You want to make sure you get that bearing face coated real good, and you want a lot of grease in there. A good glob like that will be perfect. And then you can go ahead and set the bearing in, and then set your seal in place, and then just use a small piece of wood and a hammer and gently tap it in place. Then you just want to make sure that you have that thing seated good. Then you can wipe off the old grease on the spindle, or you could leave this. This is pretty much your choice. As long as you haven't had a bearing failure or anything, it won't hurt to leave the old grease. As long as you're using the same type of grease to repack the bearings. So then you can carefully put the rotor onto the spindle. You want to make sure you don't damage your bearing. And then once you work it all the way up on, you can install your outer bearing. And then it's time to install the small washer. You know, see, the washer is keyed, so it'll only go on one way. Now, if you don't have all this grease pouring out, you probably haven't put enough grease. I'd take it back apart and add a little bit more. Now these bolts will have to be tightened to a manufacturer's recommendation. You can get that on the internet. I'm just doing mine by feel. Then I'm just going to put the small pieces back together. Put the cotter pin through and bend that. You want to make sure you bend the cotter pin up out of the way so that it doesn't scrape the dust cover. Then to reinstall that cover, you can just push it on and then give it a few taps with the hammer until that small outer lip is flush with the rotor. Now it's time to prep the caliper. And in this case, I'm going to clean it with some brake parts cleaner. I'm going to use one of the old pads, and I'm going to push the piston back into its bore. Now you'll have to do this anytime that you change the pads on a car, because as the brakes wear, the piston in the caliper will push out to accommodate that wear, so that the pads can still push on the rotor. So with new pads, you have more material, and you need to create more room for the caliper to fit over the rotor. So you see I have it pushed back flush, and now I'm going to remove these slide pins. Now the way I'm going to do that is pushing them all the way out one way, as you can see. And these things can be tricky to get in and out, so don't get too frustrated with them. You'll have to work at it for a while. Same with these rubber pieces. If you give them a good pull, they'll pop out. And then to install the new ones, you'll just kind of bend it in half a little bit and then push it through. You can grab it and pull it. So if you see, I kind of bend it and make sort of like a taco shape out of it, and then push that through until I can grab it. And then just make sure that they're seated. Then you can take the pins, dip those in grease, and then work them in. Now this part is very difficult, just because the hole in the rubber is actually smaller than the pin, so that it creates a watertight seal so that no water gets in here. You see, once they're in, although they're slightly difficult to slide, they will slide back and forth. Then you can go ahead and install your new hardware, your new shims, and those should just push right into place. Then you can just put a little bit of grease on the areas where the pad is going to make contact with the shims. You can also put the grease on the pads themselves. Again, this is going to help with noise reduction and just to help the pads move freely. Okay, and then you have to make sure that you push the slide pins all the way away from the pads so that you can slide the caliper over top of them. Then you'll just pick up on the little pieces on the pad just like that, slide the caliper right into place, and then install your caliper mounting bolts. Now you can see I've cleaned the bolts and I greased them. Then you can tighten those up. Now the reason that we took the master cylinder cover off as our first step is because whenever you push the caliper piston back, it's going to push the fluid back up into the master cylinder, any of the excess. So now at this time, you can put your cap back on, get in the vehicle, and gently pump the brakes a few times. You want to make sure before you move the vehicle you have brake pressure. Okay, and the tools that we used were the brake parts cleaner to clean the new rotors, and also the caliper piston before you push that back in, the grease gun and the bearing packer to pack the new bearings, or the old bearings to repack them. The C-clamp to push the caliper piston back in. The ratchet and crescent wrench to remove bolts. We use the needle nose and the flathead screwdrivers. And then the hammer to remove and put stuff back on. And that's pretty much it, guys.